Let me double check my settings. Everything looks good. Give me a shout out if everything sounds good. So that's the buzz. Welcome, 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 welcome. It looks like we are broadcasting, so that is great. Hey, so I am Tom Lommel. I'm the creator of Dungeon Bastard. I am Bill Cavalier, the Dungeon Bastard, all of those things. As I have mentioned before, I don't do a ton of Dungeon Bastarding to Storm King's Thunder because, mostly because that's a lot of work, but also because I have to run this as an Adventures League AL legal event at my game store, so I am not legally, I'm not technically allowed to mess with a little bit. uh, our topics today. I'm going to give a session recap. I'm going to talk about the creature deck, which I mentioned on Tuesday. I'm going to talk about wasted prep, and I'm going to have a very special thing for you guys. If you've been following the show, you know that I have been creating extra things for my players and for my own personal use and for organization and stuff like that. And I am sharing all the stuff from Chapter 1 with you guys in a Dropbox folder. Let me pull that up and drop a link in the chat. You can also @ me on Twitter when I'm not doing the show, and I will get you a link to that. Usually I include it whenever I do like a recap the next day of what's going on. So let me pull this up, copy that link. Oh, it's the pleasant Dropbox noise. I'm going to drop this. So you guys have access to that drop folder. You're going to see, just to get a little ahead of myself, you're going to see a couple things in there. One of them, well, you're going to see 4 things in there. There's 2 versions of a battle map that I did for the orc attack that happens in Chapter 1, so on the City of Nightstone. And I'll talk about that, but if you want to look at the PDFs, they're printer-sized. There's a sort of a black and white version, and there's a color version depending upon whatever your preference is, what you have access to at work. And you guys can take a look at those, but I'm going to talk about that more in depth a little later on. And then finally, hopefully we'll have some time for Q&A to chat about the things that you want to chat about, things that you have questions about. There was a couple questions that I did not have a chance to get to last time because I was talking a lot. Shocker, why do you tune into the stream? Mostly to listen to me yammer. That's fine. So, let's start with the session recap. Where we left off last week with the players was they had decided we've seen enough of town, we've seen enough goblins, there seems to be goblins everywhere, we're kind of running low on resources, we're kind of running low on hit points, let's go find a place to take a long rest, and it looks like that keep over there is probably the best place to do it, so let's head there. I'm not always convinced that the party is going to do that. But you know, in this case, they did actually honestly do that. Let me jump back for 1 second. I have to pick up something. There's a piece of prep that I wanted to show you that I don't have with me. Believe it or not, I actually don't do all of my prep during the stream, which is easy to believe if you've watched the stream because mostly it's talking and not me actually like out and out prepping stuff. So I'm going to show you it. First of all, can you see this? Do you see this, guys? This is this is my DM bag. This is a camera bag that I got for 30 or 40 bucks. And I wanted something padded. It's a little bit heavier than maybe a normal bag is, but that's my kit. That's what I run with. Actually, those notes might be in one of these folders here. One of the things I discovered this week is that I have too many folders. So that's something to think about. I'm looking for... It's not in there. It might be in there. It's not in there. there's a reason that they call this show Disorganized Play. And last night I got done. Yeah, for me, DMing is sort of like doing a show where, like a live performance, either a comedy show or an improv show or something like that. I can't just come home and relax. I need like an hour afterwards to just sort of tune out, mellow out, and kind of wind down, reflect on what happened. So here's what I wanted to show you. What I decided to do, I'm a big fan of note cards. Follow me on Twitter. You're going to see index cards all over the place. And what I did in my sit down, seriously think about it, kind of get organized kind of prep was I did a note card for here's what's happening at the keep. I did a note card for here are the things that are happening that night. I did a note card for here are the things that could happen the next morning. And then I did a note card for the orc attack. And so each of those has sort of a couple different things, right? It has, so I should have taken a snapshot of this, and I apologize that I didn't. I could theoretically quick do it and put it up in the window if you really want to see it. I don't want to waste too much time. But it has two sections to it, right? I'm going to take a quick snapshot of this one, I guess. All right. Let me drop this into, it should automatically go into my Dropbox. So let me see if I can grab that quick, and then we can talk through it together. So I'm going to add this thing here. Okay. Here it is. That's that. Browse. We're going to go up to here. Hopefully it'll be. Sorry, I don't know why I didn't think of this earlier, but anyway, here we are. Well, not great, but here we go. All right, that thing is huge, so. And it's visible. There you go. Look, it's the keep, you guys. Let me resize this thing a little bit so it's not quite so crazy. Can I see what I'm doing? Not necessarily. Live in real time. Magical editing. Whoop, even smaller. I don't know how much smaller. Oops. Let's not do that. Even smaller. How badly do you guys need to see my face? Is it super important? Alright, good enough. Hey, alright. So, I've got basically on this thing. Yeah, I can zoom in further if you want. So basically on this thing, I have the kind of the title of the encounter, or the period that I'm trying to cover. I do little check boxes for things that the party has to deal with, right? So they have to cross the bridge, right? And then I just made little notes about things that, little highlights, things that I wanted to hit. So the door is broken by a boulder. All right, it didn't make sense to me that the guards have been there for 3 days and they left the door just open. They didn't. Goblins are running all over the town and they didn't do anything to secure this whatsoever. So these are notes where I've sort of gone off the beaten path here in terms of details that I want to highlight to make sure that my picture of what's happening is getting communicated here, and that I don't forget it because it's not in my copy of the module. So I have notes about that. So the door's been broken by a boulder. The guards. What are the guards arguing about? Okay, well, it says they're just sort of arguing about who's going to be in charge or whatever. But this specifically now, they're arguing about who's going to keep watch and how they're going to repair the door. So they're aware that the door is broken, but I wanted to give the idea that they're arguing about the most basic dumb things. Who's going to be on watch? Who's actually going to, it was literally an argument like, I don't want to fix it. Why don't you if you think you're so smart, you go fix it. It's that kind of childish argument that they were having. Try and give the players an idea. Oh, okay. These guys do not have it together. So a couple other things, details. I made up a couple NPCs. They're waiting for Aerith Zam and Claydon Sheck to get back because the two of them swam the moat and went to ask the Ardeep elves for help with these cloud giants and goblins and whatnot. And then this is a note to myself that those two probably got murdered by the orcs, right? But that just adds a little bit of... I felt like it added a little bit, an extra level of believability that, oh, okay, the smartest guys who were left decided to take charge and go do something proactive, although it was very risky. And now that it even explains why these guys are even more freaked out, is like the smartest guys are left, and we're here, and I don't know who's... what are we going to do about it? There's a whole town full of goblins. We can't take on a whole, that sort of panic thing. And so down here, basically... is another checkbox of, oh no, I'm moving the wrong thing. Oh well. Down here is basically, I just moved another thing. You can't see the invisible things I'm moving, but that's okay. So down here is another checkbox of stuff that they need to do. So they need to gather info, maybe hear the guards arguing, and then they need to settle the guard situation. They need to take charge, calm them down, do something with these dumb paralyzed guards. So I basically did this for 4 different scenes, right? I don't know that it's, in this particular case, it's broken down to sort of a chronological type of set of events. I mean, that's fine. That's how a lot of scenes are going to roll out, is chronologically. So there's the keep, there's what happens the next morning, there's that night, actually, so this is the order. The keep, later that night, the next morning, and then the orc attack, right? So now I just have a quick little note card on each one of those things. Maybe ideally I would have written this in the margins of the module or something like that, but one of the things that I love about index cards is I have a really tough time writing a bunch of stuff in a notebook that I feel like it's going to be permanent, and then when I make a mistake or I change my mind or I want to edit it, then it freaks me out. I have to cross stuff out, and it looks messy, and it feels disorganized to me. That's the way my particular brain works. Hopefully yours does not work that way. Also, the obvious solution here is do it electronically, and you can edit to your heart's content and put it on a tablet or whatever you want to do. That's great. As has been established, I'm not a fan of DMing with electronics. That's just me. So, that's the way that is for me. So for me, this index card is perfect. I don't have to worry about how much battery is on my index cards. I find that electronics provide me with a lot of distraction, so I don't like to and a lot of fuss, even though I consider myself sort of a tech guy. I like to do things in an analog format. Number one, it allows me to think it out and kind of like register it as I'm writing it out. Number two, there's something about having crafted something with your hands that makes it more rewarding. That's for me personally. Maybe that's not the case for you. So that's the prep work that I did for that session. These are the 4 scenes that I expected to unfold. So how did it actually roll out? They crossed the bridge between the keep, the gap and the bridge, not without some problems. It turns out nobody in the party has a 15 strength, and it explicitly says in the adventure that you have to have a 15 strength in order to make that jump. The bard awarded some inspiration, and then the ranger, who has a 14 strength, attempted to make that jump, and he failed. So he took some damage, and then he made a second attempt, and he got like a 19. He might have nat 20 did it, but I think he got like a 19, finally got across. And then it was a matter of them just making some simple acrobatics checks to get across. So that was fine. They decided to sneak ahead. They thought it was weird that the door was crushed open and that they hadn't seen anybody, and night had begun to fall at that point, so they were really kind of confused. There's no torches, there's no windows that have any light in them or anything like that. I will say there's something a little weird about the keep, which is the guards have been there for 3 days. It doesn't explicitly say like where they've holed up this whole time. Apparently they're supposed to be in that barracks, right? But when you encounter them, they're arguing in the dining hall, great hall, throne room type of area. You'd think there'd be a little more description in the barracks of, and also they'd be a little more freaked out of like, why come we don't have any food or any of that kind of stuff. That whole 3 days timeline, I really recommend if you're going to start over, like, dispense with the 3 days thing. It was like, they attacked, the Giants attacked last night, the Goblins came in early this morning, wiped the place, are wiping the place clean, spending the day doing that, and you happen to show up. Like, the 3 days timeline is really not working for me. It's not going to bear up to examination by the time that we're all done. If the players try to put this together, it's not going to work very well for them. So that is they got over there. They heard the guards arguing. The monk stealthed ahead. He's the only stealthy member of the party. There's 2 guys in like plate mail or chain mail. So they're at disadvantage. Well, I think 3 guys. I think they're all at disadvantage. Most of the rest of the party. We had a gnome ranger join us this week. He had played at my table when I was a player last season, so I knew who he was. I kind of knew what to expect in terms of playstyle and stuff like that. So we're now a bard, life cleric, half-elf monk, a dwarven fighter. This looks like that's probably going to stick, and then a dwarven ranger. Yeah, he's actually a dwarven ranger. So we had a party of 5. So that's pretty cool. So they snuck around, they heard the guards arguing, they rapidly deduced that the guards were a bunch of doofuses, and decided basically like immediately like, okay, well, we'll hole up here and we're going to cut the ropes down that we strung across between the bridge to get back and forth. We're going to cut those down so the goblins can't come across the bridge and ambush us, and we're going to lay down and sleep for the night. Okay, are you going to set watches? Or we could just have the guards watch. Then why don't we have the guards set up a watch? And I'm like, if that's what you want to do, you do that. Why don't you do that? let the NPC guards watch. They're incompetent, so that was well established. They talked their way out of that. It was a long conversation for some reason to set up a watch for them to figure out how they could each get 8 hours of sleep. So that took care of scene 1, the keep, and dealing with the guards. The guards told them the information of 3 days ago these cloud giants attacked and they came down and the whole backstory, as well as the stuff that I had detailed out here in terms of, so Aerith Zam is the brother of one of the guards, so there's more of a family connection there, and that made things have a little more stakes. That all went well, but they very quickly got the idea these guys are numbskulls, and there's a reason. The only reason they survived is because they were cut off, and the goblins couldn't get to them and murder them. So they all decided to take their long rest. They bed down. I rolled for when the next event was going to happen. It happened right away on the first watch before anybody really got anything going. Kella decided to draw the party out, and the way that she did that was to get herself cornered at the end of the bridge and get attacked by goblins. Now, I misjudged this combat a little bit, but I also misplayed it a little bit in that I don't know if I was looking at her stat block or what was happening, but I gave the goblins sneak attack damage, and 3 of the goblins, she was surrounded by 6 goblins, and 3 of the goblins attacked her and hit immediately, and then I gave them sneak attack damage, and she took 66 plus 6 or 9 points of damage or whatever it was, and she dropped round 1. The other issue that there was with this combat was everybody was bedded down inside the keep, and so there's no front door to the keep the way that I read the map. I didn't see it that way. So they ended up running around the keep and then all the way down to the edge of the broken bridge. But then there's this 15-foot gap. So there was a long series of you take a double move, but you can only move 50. Therefore, because it's 120 feet from where you're sleeping to go all the way around the castle and down to the end of the bridge where you can even take a shot at anything going on, that means you're doing at least 2 rounds of double moves before you can even get into the fight. That was a little annoying. I wasn't particularly happy with it. The players seemed alright, but it makes for 2 very boring turns for those people. It might have been better to just retcon, there's a front door. It doesn't really matter, like whether there's a front door. So Kella drops right away, and then we had a veritable comedy of errors of of guys trying to either like thrown weapons 60 feet away and they're at disadvantage, or trying to jump over the 15-foot gap. And all of them are dex-based characters. They're not strength characters, and they didn't leave any of the ropes up. So I think it was 2 characters in a row. It was almost 3 characters in a row. Tried to make that jump, missed, landed in the river. Now the good news was I ruled, you just swim up the, across to the other bank, climb up through the scaffolding or support beams of the bridge, and then you can hop up there and take care of business. The bard got over there, and he got in trouble. I kind of kept 2 of the goblins sort of back out of the combat and let them be the bosses, and they were sort of ordering everyone else around. Also fine. But it was fun. It was a fun scene to paint. They really struggled. They had a tough time. They don't have a ton of ranged capabilities, so some of that was a little weird. They were still first level. They hadn't taken a long rest. They were still a little dinged up from exploring the town earlier, so they were not doing well. But they managed to succeed against the goblins. Although I knocked the bard out, and they were close to dragging the bard off. And instead of killing Kella, they had bound her up, and they were going to drag her off too. So they defeated the goblins. They stabilized everyone. I think they did a healing spell on the bard. They didn't do anything with Kella. They went back. They did a long rest. I'm like, okay, you've officially, whether you know it or not, you've cleared the town of goblins, because there were only 6 of them left anyhow. So I let them level up to 2nd level. As the milestone says, once they clear the town, of goblins, they level up to 2nd level. So the next encounter, so at that point, Kella was supposed to introduce herself to the party. If she hadn't gotten knocked out, they show up and rescue her, and she's very gracious and tries to earn at least one admirer in the group, and she's a little flirtatious. She's going to definitely play off her look, she's going to play off her charm, she's going to play off their egos. She's going to try and work the situation to her advantage so that they feel not necessarily indebted to her, but maybe protective of her. They feel bonded to her. Well, it's hard for her to do that when she's unconscious. But in the morning, it created this whole situation where, oh, were you the one who rescued me? I don't remember what happened. I was cornered at the end of the bridge, and I did my best to defend myself. And some of the players are a little suspicious. They're like, you had a hand crossbow and a short sword. Like, what do you, I think you could have taken those guys. And she's like, well, clearly I couldn't have. I'm glad you were there to rescue me, because I got murdered by these guys. So the Grognard asks, was the party at least rolling dice and having fun, or was it a struggle to get them going? They were rolling dice and having fun, but it was a comedy of errors in terms of, they're like, so the nice thing is, when you give them a nice scene paint and show them, okay, you rolled a 3 on your acrobatics check or your athletics check to leap across that 15-foot bridge. Well, the good news is it's over water, so now I get to have a consequence without a consequence. You fall, you splat, you describe the whole thing and give a little extra juice to it, and then they see the ridiculousness of the situation, and it's okay to be incompetent, right? Like, that can be kind of fun. You don't have to be a hero all the time, especially when you didn't take any damage. You just look silly and you've been set back a little bit because you got a bad die roll. The thing you have to keep in mind about this game is when you roll badly, it's better to have a bad result that has some sort of consequence, that demonstrates an outcome, that puts you in a position that you would expect, although you may not welcome it, or fits into the narrative in a way that makes the die roll justified or legitimate or makes sense, right? So if you want to bore your players, have them say, make an athletics check. Oh, I rolled a 4. Okay, next. Okay, well that seems like a dead end, right? You've waited to go around the table. You've had this moment where you're like, all right, now I got this great thing I'm going to do. I'm going to jump across the bridge and I'm going to stab one of these goblins. Let's jump across the bridge. Pop, pop, pop. I rolled a 3. And you can see the wind just go out of a player's sails at that point. But if you at least give them the gift of a good description of what happens, they may still be frustrated by it, but at least there's some entertainment value to that bad roll, and at least it may give them some ideas of something they can do next turn picking up on that thing. If you just go, oh yeah, you missed, no, you fall off the bridge, you've taken the spotlight off of them when it was their turn and they were all geared up to be excited. So if there's one thing that Dungeon World can teach you, it's that, or Apocalypse World, its progenitor, it's that bad results can still have interesting game effects. Let me take this down. There we go. All right. So she wakes up in the morning. She definitely endears herself to several members of the party, asks them who they are, and she gives this garbage story about she's here to meet Morak and she wants to do a business deal with him. She's a traitor, which the funny thing to that is, like, is she a traitor or a traitor? But she lets that fly, and she says, oh, I got here a day and a half ago, and I was looking for Morak, but the whole town was taken over, and I got cornered, and I needed help, and I thought maybe you guys could help me, and I tried to get to you, but the goblins got to me first. And they were all like, oh, well, if there's anything we can do. They fell for her flattery, kind of hook, line, and sinker. There was some suspicion on the part of a couple of the players, like, is she really telling the whole story? Probably not, but they kind of didn't care. So that was in the morning. This is where my little plan of these scenes starts to go off the rails a little bit. So the party gears up. They're like, we're going to go. The guards have told us that there's these bat caves, as they've been described. I didn't give them the actual name of dripping caves. There's some bat caves where we think the villagers have probably retreated to. They're supposed to retreat here to the keep, but because we were cut off right away, they couldn't do that, so they ran, and they left, whatever the timeline was. So we think they're probably holed up there. And then they started to I don't know if they really put together that, oh, okay, the goblins went off in that direction too. There was a little bit of that. They didn't nail that down 100%, but they're like, we're going to go get the goblins, right? We're going to, right? That's not what they thought. They thought, we're going to go get the villagers. We're going to go check in on them, see that they're okay. We're going to get them, bring them back. Do the guards want to come with us? Not really, no. They don't. We'd like to stay here if we can. I will say that halfway through the goblin combat, where things were not looking good, the bard was down, the monk was down to like 1 hit point. It was really looking dodgy, and then the dwarf ranger is like, what about those 4 guards? Aren't they going to come and help? And I'm like, oh yeah, sure. The 2 of them show up. They were running alongside. They had to get their weapons. And one of them pulled off a crit, like very first thing. And then they beat up one of the goblins, and then that same guard shot that goblin when it only had 1 hit point. And so they're like on top of the world. I've killed 2 goblins. That was fun. So they're getting ready to basically, like, they scout through town. They're like, oh, is there anything left in town that the goblins didn't steal that maybe we would find interesting? I'm like, how long do you want to spend searching the town? Because I'll tell you right now, there's no goblins left. So you tell me how long you want to spend searching for loot. Not that long. All right, we'll say you spend an hour and a half and they found some stuff. They get done. They hear hoofbeats, top, clop, 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 coming across the bridge. So that's fine. Who is it? 7 humans on horseback. Okay, all right. And Zolkin comes rolling in, and he's got his little Zentrum snake perched on his shoulder, and he's like, what's going on here? I don't even remember how he introduced himself. They were sort of like, who are you? He's like, my name is Zolkin, and they're like, who are you? Well, I'm a merchant. They're like, there's a lot of that going around. And then Kella came out, and Zolkin was like, Kella, oh, it's good to see you're safe. And they're like, you guys know each other? And then they picked up on that, like, Zolkin was, infatuated or charmed by Kella, and Kella, and the monk was sort of like, is there something going on with you? Is your relationship just professional? And Kella's like, oh, you're jealous. That's so cute. At any rate, Zolkin informs the party that he has come here to basically protect Kella. And they're like, well, how did you know that Kella was in trouble? And he's like, oh, she sent a message. And he pats his little coiled snake. Half the party at this point I've slipped notes to, and I'm like, you know that these guys are Zentrum. Those snakes, like, are used by the Zentrum as messenger snakes. And so at least he is Zentrum. Who knows about her? So the 2 Harpers in the group are kind of like, and Zolkin is like, we're here to protect Kella, and we've been riding all morning, and we'd like to stop and have a little something to eat and rest ourselves and water our horses. And they're like, we're going to go get the villagers. And Zolkin's like, go get them. he did not, as far as Zolkin's concerned, like, the less people who come back, the better. That just means a bigger land grab for the Zents, for the Black Network. But the party was like, you're not coming along? And he's like, no, I'm not coming along. And they're like, Kella, you're not coming along? And she's like, after what happened last night, no, I'm not coming along. And they're like, okay, we'll see you later. So they took off. So the whole, like, let's confront Zolkin and maybe let's curry some favor and that sort of stuff that was supposed to be set up did not get that. They're at odds with those people right now. So maybe when they come back, it will end up being more of a confrontation. But they took off for the dripping caverns. At which point, I'm furiously thinking, like, how am I going to get my final scene out, right? So I have this orc attack planned, and I had done this whole battle map for the thing, and I really did not want it to go to waste, but what are you going to do? Players are going to be players. So they took off into the woods, and I'm like, all right, I decided one of the guards came with them to show them the way out to the dripping caves. And on their way, they make some perception checks. What's your marching order? And they hear, like, clonk, crash, stuff coming through a group of creatures coming through the underbrush at a pretty rapid pace. They weren't running, but they're coming at what you might consider like a forced march. They're very intense. It's very deliberate footsteps. It's fast. There's a group of at least 10 creatures. You hear this coming. What do? We hide. Okay, great. Make group stealth checks. Well, these orcs are not particularly perceptive. It's only like an 8 or a 9, maybe a 10. One guy rolled a nat 1, so he outright fumbled it, and then the other guy rolled a 5. To the characters of disadvantage. So that didn't work very well for them. So the dwarf is just basically like caught flat-footed out in the middle of this clearing as these 10 orcs come out. And I'm like, you know that they've seen you because some of them are drawing their great axes, and a couple of them have their raised their javelins, and does anyone speak Orcish? No. Well, they're grunting and growling at you. So they the dwarven character actually pulls a pretty good move here, and he's just basically like, I'm not a threat. Just keep on going. I'm not going to do anything. And I'm like, roll a deception check, basically. And he rolled like a 17 or something like that, and the chief rolled like a 5. Again, I don't use a DM screen, so most of my rolls are out in the open for that sort of stuff. So they sign, and and the chief basically sort of taunted him, like raised the back flap of his loincloth and smacked himself and spit at him and, blew raspberries and stuff. And I was like, come on, boys. And chomp, chomp, chomp. And then 10 more orcs came out of the underbrush behind him, and they kept going, and they head off towards town. So the guys hustle back up. What do you think we should do? And they're like, 20 orcs? We couldn't kill 6 goblins. We're not taking on 20 orcs. We're not taking on 10 orcs, but we're definitely not taking on 20 orcs. And the guard who had gone with them was like, but, it looks like they're headed to town. This is not... They're going back to town. And they're like, well, who cares? We're going to go get the villagers. We'll round up the villagers. We'll come back as a big mob, and we'll take on those orcs and take back over the town. And the guard is like, look, we don't know that those people are alive, but we definitely know that those people are alive. Like, those are the only friends that I know I have. Up in the village, the village in the caves, who knows? They haven't come back for like 2 days. That's not good. Well, if you want to go, like, you could run back there and get ahead of them and warn Zolkin and your other 3 buddies that these orcs are coming. You could probably pull ahead of those guys. And he's like, oh, I don't know. So they were giving this guard really mixed messages of like, or you could come with us. We're going to go to these caves. We could use your help. If you want to stick with us, there's safety in numbers. Or you could go back and warn your buddies. And so finally I rolled, and the guy just made up his decision like, guess what? I'm headed back. I'm going to go. It's my duty to go and warn my compatriots. Like, I am a soldier of Nightstone, and my duty is to Nightstone, and I'm going to run back there and do whatever I can. Cut to 10 minutes later, everybody makes a perception check to hear the sounds of that guard being murdered. So that was, that's the DM consequences coming into play. And they were like, oh, well, I guess he got caught. I'm like, you guys are cold. And they're like, they don't like Zolkin, so they were like, we don't care about him. These guards are incompetent. We don't care about him. We don't have anything in town, so we have no reason to go back there and try and fight 20 orcs. And there was the idea floated of maybe we could start the combat, like let Zolkin and the guys start the combat, and then we come flying in and wedge them, and that way we'd have a tactical advantage, and we actually might be able to take on 20 orcs. Nah, forget it. Okay, so that happened. So then I was like, I'm gonna give them one more chance to try and get involved with this orc thing, and maybe have some ideas of what's going on, and then we're just gonna move forward. So, cut to 10 minutes later. Make a perception check. Somebody like nat 20 their perception check, or got a 19 or something like that. Okay, you see an elf standing in the woods staring at you, and he's like, oh, okay. I'm like, And then all of a sudden 5 elves enter the clearing. And the monk is half elf. He's the only guy in the party who speaks Elvish. So Roan, or whatever his name is, comes rolling out of the underbrush, and he's like, "What are you doing in our woods?" And they're like, "Oh, we're trying to save the villagers of Nightstone. They're in these caves, and they might be attacked by goblins." And the guard had given them directions to the caves, and they had pretty much figured out, oh, okay, the wagon with the goblins and the cave are probably in the same place. And the elf is like, "We don't care about Nightstone. That doesn't. Those are human lands, and all they do is give us trouble." And he's very snotty about the entire thing. And they're like, "You know what? You're kind of right." But he's also very insulting to Eben, who's the half elf. Because he accuses him of not having pure elven blood and not adhering to elven standards of nobility and courage, and Eben is not having this. But Roan is like, "We're tracking orcs. If you would like to help us slaughter these orcs, you are welcome to join forces with us." And they're like, "No, we're good. Like, you go do your thing, and we're going to do our thing, and good luck to you. 5 elves? You're kind of outmanned. There's 20 orcs." And Roan is like, "We might be outmanned, but we're not outpowered." Okay, so very confident, typical, like, snotty elf guy. He takes off, and at this point, they're committed to heading into the dripping caves. Alright, fine. The good news is, just in case, I had packed my flip mat, my piezo flip mat. Super portable. It's got hexes if you want to do hexes. It's got squares if you want to do squares. I'm a fan of this thing. It's dry erase. Fortunately for me, I had packed it because I had told them, "Hey, we might have a combat where you might need your miniatures. Bring your miniatures." I wanted that to pay off somehow. So they come rolling up and they see that the wagon tracks go right into this cavern. The cavern's completely dark. What are you going to do? They send the half-elf in to scout the place, because since he's the most stealthy, he rolls a terrible stealth roll, but fortunately the goblins and the ogre are not particularly adept at noticing things. So he comes rolling in, he sees 2 goblins up on these ledges, he sees this giant mud bath ogre thing, and he kind of takes it all in. He can see that the cavern is bigger, but his dark vision doesn't actually go, and he's like, "Ugh, okay, that wasn't good. All right, let me pull back and form a plan." So their plan is to hang outside the entrance to the dripping caverns, have the half-elf go in, drop some coins, some gold coins, and then fling one in to make a noise, and then hopefully one of the goblins or the ogre will hear that, come follow the trail of coins out the front door, where they can do a pincher move and attack the guy and draw some of these combatants out. So that plan is all fine and dandy, but it doesn't work when the half-elf goes rolling in to drop a trail of coins and blows his stealth roll with like a 3 or a 5 or something like that, and gets noticed by the ogre and by one of the goblins. And combat breaks out, and the ogre walks up, and he pastes the... I mean, that ogre, like, when you're second level, ogres will destroy you, because they're doing 2d8 plus 4? 2d8 plus 4, something like that. It's pretty brutal. So, yeah, he's doing 2d8 plus 4 with his great club. So they get in a fight with this ogre, and this ogre is just monster destroying dudes. The bard one-shot. The bard goes in and casts Fairy Fire on the ogre, which worked, but then the ogre comes rolling in, Fairy Fire or not, and pastes the bard. Well, his spell goes down as soon as he goes unconscious. Then he whacks the he whacks the monk down to 1 hit point. The goblins are shooting at dudes. And the party is immediately like, everybody's sort of, the ambush went wrong. The monk got trapped inside. The monk is inside. The rest of the party charges in after him, decides to kind of like form a united front. The ogre walks in, clears that united front, And then they like start distributing healing potions and do a tactical retreat, and managed to defeat the first ogre about the time that the second ogre comes trudging out from the middle of the room and decides to avenge her mate. And so 3 rounds of combat in, that was where we cut, and that was the end of the session. So that was, we may not get to everything today. I might be able to squeeze it in, but that was the recap. So I did not expect to get to the Dripping Caves that session. There were a couple other things that I thought would happen, maybe take longer. The party definitely decided they were going to stay on their objective of going to the caves and freeing the villagers. We're going to talk more on Tuesday about the fact that they're only 2nd level, and they're going to have to cast a light spell to really do anything in this cave, because not everybody has dark vision. So this is going to be an interesting session 2 coming up. But I don't want to talk too much about the prep for session 2 or session 3. We'll cover that on Tuesday at 2 o'clock. Do I need to adjust my curtains so that I don't have this weird band of light? I'm going to do that. It's going to get a lot brighter. Oh. Okay. Welcome to the hot zone. That's not particularly great. I'm actually going to close that back up. All right, this is a little better. Okay, so yeah, the orc fight would have been awesome. We're going to talk about that, as a matter of fact. All right, so we don't have a hard out at 5 o'clock, but I also don't want these things to be 2 hours long. So I'm going to try and compress some of our topics here. So the monster deck. I talked on Tuesday about my monster deck that I put together, which, just to recap, is a bunch of stat cards, which I decided not to bring along. I looked at the monsters that I needed. There was not a lot there. I was also a little bit annoyed with having to try and type up another set of stats for the Eye of Grumsh and the Orc Chieftain, and it was all around not making me happy. But then I came upon a novel solution, which, if you were following along on Twitter, which is the place that I also brainstorm in, you may have seen, because my idea, where is it? This is the reason it's called Further Evidence of Disorganized Play. Oh, where is that sheet? I put together a stat sheet. So basically my tip here on this, just very quickly, is... That's not the one. It's this one. So what I did was, I took my camera phone and took a snapshot of the stat block that I was going to use. It's probably right here. I've blurred it out, and for the sake of preserving the magic of Wizards' intellectual property, so you don't, take a screenshot of this and use it in your home game. Anyway, what I did is I took snapshots of the things from the monster manual, and then I just take this, import it into a Word doc, which I don't know why I don't have in front of me immediately. I import it into a Word doc and just do like a quick 3-column layout on it, and then I have individual sheets. Now, obviously, as you can tell, the disadvantage to this entire system is if you have a lot of sheets, they kind of get out of your grasp, right? One thing I've been doing is I will label them on the edge. Fan this a little bit so you can actually see. Oh, here it is, right here. So, Nightstone, the Keep, Ear Seekers. So this is what I put together. I've got the stat blocks here, and then underneath I've got a little hit point tracking area. So I can just use one sheet of paper if I really want to, and have all of my stats laid out for me. But this was a much better solution than some of the other stuff. I thought I was being smart in just having a couple sheets of stats put together for each of the scenes. It turns out I wasn't so smart because I did not have any stats put together for the Dripping Caves, which, although it's mostly goblins, like, I don't have any stats for ogres. I don't have any stats for the ooze if they were to encounter the ooze. Like, there's a whole bunch of stuff that I'm missing, right? So that's a little problematic. So what, I mean, this worked, but I ended up needing my monster manual, and I'm not having it with me. And I wish if I was so cocky about the whole thing, I didn't even bring my little folder of cards. If I'd had that, I could have just flipped it open here to Hag, Mephit, Ooze, Ogre, boom, I got it. Like, that's it. Are you going to focus? I don't know. Who cares? All right. So I may start packing this thing anyhow. The store organizer has a monster manual. Usually somebody has a monster manual, so I just ran over there, grabbed it quick, and then copied it down on an index card like I do everything else, and away we went. So that worked out, but I didn't use my creature deck, and I should have brought it with me. It was purely an act of hubris where I thought, I've got everything I need, and the truth was, I did not have everything I needed. So, that's my update on the creature deck. Alright, so the orc battle, the whole thing ended up being wasted prep, right? So I want to talk about that briefly. I mean, I'm not happy with how it went down, but I don't know that it was entirely wasted prep. So here was the thing that I spent probably 45 minutes on yesterday. So if you follow me on Twitter, which you should be doing, you will know that I'm a fan of a thing called gaming paper. And so I did a, let's start here, full-size, not a full-size map, but like a 5-foot scale cross-sectional on 1-inch squares of the area where the orc battle is supposed to take place. Hey Tom, that's really hard to see. Guess what I did? I made something magical for you. It looks like this. So I made this map. You can't see me, but I'm still here. I made this map, and what I decided is that one of the towers got taken out by a boulder shot, right? And so I've got the whole thing here. I've got the shore of the opposite shore. The tower got taken out. This is assuming that the orcs can't cross the drawbridge. The drawbridge has been raised by Zolkin, etc. Right? So this gives them their entry point rather than making it the broken drawbridge. They go just south to 2F, and they can swim across, or they can swim up the moat, climb this tower rock fall of scree and debris, and then basically the idea here is that you're going to have a battle, a choke point battle, where orcs are going to be coming in those 2 5-foot squares where the tower was, and the rest of the party is going to be behind, or I guess it is behind, technically, behind the windmill, trying to keep them from plunging through the gap. And, you send orcs at them in waves so that they don't get too bunched up, and that's the map. So it's, let me bring myself back up here. Move myself. Move this down here. Oh boy. Now we got rid of everything. No. One more adjustment. Cancel. Bear with me. Hey, now I'm on top of the map. So the basic idea here is that, oh, which way am I pointing? This way, I guess. This way. All right, let's do this. So your party is right here, about roughly, and then the orcs are coming through They're coming through that gap. And I thought it was skinny. What I like about this formation is it's skinny. It doesn't take up a lot of room on the table. It's going to be a fun battle because choke point battles are always interesting. The Orcs had the goal to sort of punch a hole in the defenses and then send a couple guys down to try and liberate the drawbridge. But it's a nice looking map. I'm pretty happy with. This is gaming paper. I really love their stuff in terms of making one-shot maps that I can just draw the details out ahead of time, and then you lay it on the table, and everybody is like, "Oh wow, this is cool. What's this over here?" And "Oh, I want to go over here." And it's already gridded for you. It really takes crayon and marker really nicely, and I don't have. Like, I'm okay at sketching, but I'm not an artist. I wouldn't consider myself an artist. I do a decent job of cartography, right? You don't have to be terrific at this thing. Mostly this was sort of mimicking what they had already done with the Nightstone map and just picking where it was and then doing some simple shading and filling some details in with marker. The good news for you guys is you can use normal graph paper. You can go to Staples or whatever and get one of those giant pads. I don't know. Here's one of my problems with the giant pad is it's a real bear to store, and gaming paper comes in a roll like it's wrapping paper, and I literally have 12 rolls of it sitting next to my cabinet, and that's that. It stores in a much smaller form factor than getting one of those giant, like, 3M grid pads. Also, I think the surface is just a little bit nicer. I think it's going to take crayon and some other mediums a little bit better. So the good news is I have this sitting on deck, assuming, well, who knows what's going to happen. We'll talk about it on Tuesday, what might happen. If the party turns around, like gets their noses bloodied and is like, we got to go back to town and get help, then they're going to probably either walk into this battle in progress, or they're going to walk into the aftermath of this battle, and they might end up having to be the ones who swim the moat and come up through that gap, because the Orcs are going to raise the drawbridge. Or maybe the Elves are picking them off. Who knows what's going on? We'll figure that out next Tuesday. But this map is going to be useful for something. It was fulfilling to make it, and the good news is I am going to share it with you. Again, there is the link in the Dropbox. If you go in there, there's the raw image, both in color and in black and white, and also there are 2 PDFs that are in color and black and white. And if you print those off, let's just make this go away. Let's bring back our Storm King's Thunder recap. That's us. If you print those off, you will get 5 sheets of paper, which you can trim. You trim one side, and then you match it to the other. Okay? This is not going to look particularly great on camera because I'm not far enough away from my webcam, but so you trim this end off and then match it up to here, and then tape it down. And you do that for the various joints, and you get a full-size 1-to-1 8.5 by, well, it's actually 11 by whatever this is, full map of the entire battle, right? So you have your own version of this that you can either print off in color or you can print off in black and white. This is the color version actually printed off in black and white. It's not bad. The grid is a little light. It's a little faint. There's also nothing stopping you from going back and just taking a regular crayon and coloring some of this stuff in and calling it good. Usable, disposable. Enjoy yourselves. I spent most of the morning editing that together for you guys, scanning and editing that together so that you guys could have that today. So that's the Orc Battle Mat. I was hoping to have a little bit of time to do Q&A. If you guys have questions that you want to throw at me about either what's going on in the game, what I'm, if I'm having problems or you have a question about something that happened, go ahead and throw that in chat. Let me pull up. There were a couple questions from last time that I do want to address before we crank things out. Where did I put that? That is in here. And it's this. So Metal Gyro asked 2 questions that I want to tackle. I hate combat. I have a lot of players, and during combat they have to wait and wait for their turn to arrive. Then they miss their attack, and they wait, and it's boring. What to do, what to do. I agree with this 100% in that is the issue with a binary resolution system. So my advice to you is to try to keep them. Having a lot of players that's to me the best way to solve your problem is if you have 8 players to break your group in half and have 4 and 4. I like to run 4. I typically run 5, and 6 is kind of where I'm happy and not unhappy. And then at 7, it starts to get unmanageable, and at 8 is as many people as I can run at a table and try to keep everyone entertained and engaged. Depending upon the game, I meet with varying degrees of success. So that's a problem, right? So have a smaller group, number 1. Number 2, you might try playing something else that doesn't have a binary resolution system. I typically recommend something like Danger Patrol or Dungeon World. Saving Throw has streams on both of those things. If you want to see Dungeon World in action, you can watch Sean Graham on Saturdays at noon. And you'll see that even when you miss, something interesting is going to happen. You get experience. The situation will change, so you have to sort of pay attention. 8 players in Dungeon World is also still a little unruly. One of the reasons I recommend Danger Patrol is because the DM is always asking the players at the table, okay, what's dangerous about what this person is attempting? And they start giving you possible outcomes. And so the players' imaginations are engaged, even though it's not their turn. And in fact, like, I find people really like pop up and kind of come to life when they realize, oh, and they don't do it in a mean way, but like, oh, I can influence the fiction of what's happening, even though it's not my turn. They love that. So I would say also check out Danger Patrol. Otherwise, the only other thing that I can recommend is try to keep combat moving without being pushy or bossy about it. And try to have consequences that involve other players so that people are forced to pay attention a little bit. Now, not everybody is down to pay attention 100% of the time. Some people are introverted and they're fine with, like, I'm going to hang back and check out and be on my phone, and when it comes around to my turn, I'll do what I need to do. So be careful of rushing that player type too much. I really am just a terrible silhouette here. I'm going to turn this into a dark and foreboding cave. Let's see how my webcam handles that. Not bad. Should have done this earlier. So that's one thing I would recommend is try to keep the consequences. Like I talked about earlier, I talked about the consequences of rolling poorly, something interesting still happening. Have that happen, or have things where if they kill the goblin like falls at another player's feet, or they get, they hear the jingle of gold pieces as the goblin, gasps his last gasp and reaches for something that he's got clutched inside his jacket pocket. So just give them little descriptive elements that can keep those players, give them a reason to like get engaged, pay attention, give them something to act on, build the flavor of build the scene, paint the scene in a little more detail than you might normally. Now those two things are kind of at odds: run a fast combat and also paint the scene more. So that part of it is tricky. In general, those in general, having a big group is tough, and it's tough in a super binary pass-fail type of system like Dungeons and Dragons. So try a mix of those things. See if you can get your players to be thinking ahead about what's going on. On the other hand, I played a D&D Epic where our GM was like, all right, when it's his turn, I want you and you to be thinking about what you're going to do, because I don't want to have to slow down when we come around the pike. And it gave me like a Dungeons and Dragons panic attack, because you just couldn't respond fast enough to what was happening. So those are some. Finding that fine balance is going to be your challenge, but I think if you describe the world in a way that they are affected by the actions of the other players, that will help engage their interest. All right, that's enough rambling about that. Metal Gyro also asked, I don't even know if Metal Gyro is in the chat today, but you know what? These are valid questions. A problem I have is my players don't fear anything and want to kill everything, and I don't think they're going to enjoy dying if I drop the hammer on them. So I guess they don't fear anything. I totally understand this. It's interesting because we went from a game where we were all like 12th or 13th level, and we're almost sort of invulnerable at that scale of D&D. You really are superheroes at that point. And now everybody's first level, and an ogre takes a swat at you, or a goblin hits you for 7 points of damage, and you've only got 2 left. So you could try resetting your game to a lower level and being a little more judicious in how you handed out XP and what sort of monsters you threw against them to challenge them. Also, you have to ask yourself the question, am I having a lot of encounters at range where the party can get the jump on everybody and get into a tactical position and then destroy what would maybe be a challenging encounter, but because they spent 3 rounds kind of pincushioning the big bad guy, the whole thing falls apart from the inside and it's over with. So think about your tactics. I think it's important to, the other main factor, and I've talked about this before, the other main factor to really making players sweat is to deprive them, in 5th edition, is to deprive them of rests, either long rests or both short and long rests, depending upon what level they are. When they get up to that 6th, 7th, 8th level, things start recharging on a short rest that normally recharge on a long rest, that sort of thing. If you can take those things off the table and start draining them of resources, then they start biting their nails. Then they start having to use up things that they sort of had in the bank in terms of healing potions or scrolls or whatever, what have you, right? Charges on their rings and all that sort of fancy stuff. So keep pressure on your party and they will begin to sweat. I don't know if they're going to fear anything. And some groups just want to play Smash in the Trash. We're the kings of the world. That's a difficult group to cater to sometimes. And then sometimes it just all seems a little too easy and it gets a little boring. But my main tip would be moderate the amount of time that they spend on that, or moderate the opportunities that they get for long rests in particular, but short rests if need be. And I will say that was a huge motivator for my party last session, was they were looking to get into that long rest. Like, we got to get into a long rest. We've had our one short rest. We can't spend any more hit dice. We're at the end of our rope. We're going to have to start burning expendable resources we don't want to burn. Let's get into the short rest. And then those goblins attacked, and they were like, oh, and then they were in trouble. And they didn't do great to begin with, but also your job as the DM is to present the players with a challenge, make them earn whatever rewards you're going to hand out at the end of that challenge. So it doesn't matter whether it's experience or gold or magic items. Players want to feel like they earned whatever reward is coming, whether that is a matter of them, using brilliant tactics to overcome an obviously superior enemy, or if it's a case where they're outnumbered in combat and they had to, rely on the sharp edge of their sword to get them through. Whatever it is, they want to feel like you truly present a challenge and a reward, and they earn that reward. There's a more succinct way to put that, but it really is basic Pavlovian conditioning at its very, very, very deep core, right? You press the combat button or the role-playing button, and eventually XP pellets drop out. But if you just walk up to the role-playing button and give it a half-hearted effort, and a pile of XP comes out, they don't feel like they've earned it. So that's a little DM philosophy. That's a little. Those are my things for challenging the players. The other thing that I will say about this, just in closing on this topic, is I would say hit them hard early, and then have some secondary things in your back pocket that you can bring up to frighten them further, but that are lesser challenges. So if you have a mage, have that mage, you have a 6th level wizard, have him fireball right out of the gate when they're at their strongest, and then start leaning down on magic missiles on rounds 3, 4, 5, etc. But hurt them hard up fast, hurt them hard fast and up front, and then if you need to bring in additional forces or something else to keep the pressure on, you can do that. But it's better to lay waste to them right up front and raise the stakes, raise the drama, and see what happens. See whether they feel like they need to retreat. See if they feel like, no, this is no big deal. We can take this. We've taken tougher. You can weigh the situation a lot better if you lay your heavy cards out first and then follow them up with the appropriate bumps in challenge as you get deeper into the encounter. So I'm definitely a fan of hit them as hard as you can to begin with, so that they have an idea of what's going on and maybe adjust their tactics, and then you can adjust to their adjustment. All right, everybody, so that was a little Q&A. We did manage to cover everything in about an hour and 15 minutes, so that is not terrible. I know there is football on. I know you have a number of other things that you could be doing. I hope you, if you're watching this on the YouTubes, I hope you enjoyed our talk today. I had a good time hosting. Please go to Dropbox and take advantage of those resources. Let me know on Twitter, specifically, is the best way to get a hold of me, at Dungeon Bastard. If you use any of these things, or just how your game is going, or if you're having an issue, I would love to bring it up and address it in one of these Thursday Q&As. I don't know that I'll have time on Tuesdays to do my prep session to talk through this stuff, but I'll take care of it sort of as much as catch can here. So thank you so much for joining me tonight. The rest of the night we are dark here on Saving Throw. We might do some video game streaming. I'm not sure. That's not up to me. I will not be involved in that. Tomorrow night, Black Bag, our Cthulhu game, returns, and I believe it's the regular crew. So join DM, GM, Keeper. Do they still call it Keeper? Keeper Wes Otis, as he brings his players through another nightmare-inducing round of Call of Cthulhu. Saturday, as I mentioned, we have Dungeon World, the Dark Sun Dungeon World with Mr. Sean Graham. Saturday afternoon, we have Phoenix Dawn Command, hosted by Mr. Sax Carr and his group of intrepid players. On Sunday, we're having a special thing. We're having a painting session with Mr. Iron Tusk. So tune in on Sunday for Iron Tusk painting. That should be fun. I mean, if you've seen the stuff that he has rolled out for Barkey's Brigade, you're going to want to sit in and get a painting lesson here, because it is genuinely some fantastic work. I remember when we first put together the Barkey's Brigade crew, he was emailing us saying, does your character have a theme song? Because I would like to listen to that theme song as I'm painting. And like, what color are the clothes? And what color are all the, what color is the ever-glowing orb of Nidox, and what sort of equipment does he carry, and does he have a signature item? And he modded the minis and all that stuff. So just really a fantastic fantastic miniature painter and modder, and I think hopefully this is sort of a little trial balloon for us, but hopefully it'll be an interesting experience, and I hope that you can join him, and we've got a bunch of people from our Saving Throw lineup who are going to sit in and paint with Iron Tusk. So definitely check out that show. If you possibly can, if you enjoyed the stream today, please follow, subscribe, tell your friends on social media that you watched Saving Throw Show, become a Patreon supporter. Going forward, as we get deeper into Chapter 2, 3, 4, etc., some of these nice extras that as I put them together, those will likely just become Patreon rewards for people who are backers, because honestly, the two #1 ways that our show is funded, we're not funded through advertising in any significant fashion. It is backers like you and people who donate to us during the stream. So we appreciate all of your support. You can definitely help us by subscribing and spreading the word about our channel. We're trying to do something fun and educational, and hopefully we can do both of those things. So with your support, we're going to keep bringing you new and interesting shows. That's it for me. I'm Tom Lommel. You can follow me on Twitter at Dungeon Bastard, as has been obvious the entire time. I want to thank you so much for joining me. I will be back Monday night. I'm running a Realms of Rothane Dungeon World adventure. Again, if you want to see a Dungeon World one-shot that's stripped free of the campaign underpinnings, join me Monday night, assuming you are not too enraged by the presidential debates, because we will be coming on directly after the presidential debates Monday night at 7:30 Pacific. So join me for Realms of Rothane. It's, again, Plate Mail Games. Wes Otis has a Kickstarter going for that. Go back that on Kickstarter. I hope you can join me Monday night. That's it. Thank you so much for joining me, everybody. Really appreciate your time and attention. Good luck, and let's dungeon.